ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So we're finishing off volume 1 of Thomas Agenis' Introduction to Sanskrit, and we're on chapter 18, which is the last chapter. And so let's go straight to the text. Okay, so here's the summary of this chapter. First of all, we're going to deal with all remaining Sandhi rules. That's alphabet part. Then the grammar is going to introduce nouns ending in U. So far, we've had A ending nouns, we've had we've had I ending nouns, we've had long A ending nouns for feminine, and we've had re ending nouns. Now we're going to get nouns in U. Then we're going to talk some more about samas or compounds, Sanskrit compounds. Previously, we had the dvandva compound, and especially the iteratara dvandva compounds. And now we're going to talk about kamadharaya and tatpurush compounds. And then we're going to give a summary about compounds. And then we have vocabulary, which is going to give us some adjectives and some more nouns ending in U. So to the alphabet, remaining Sandhi rules. We will now study the remaining Sandhi rules, which include final R, final P, final cerebral T, final K, final guttural N, and final cerebral N, and initial CH. When he says initial CH, when he says final, it means final, the final letter of the first word. When he says initial, he means the initial letter of the second word. So this is what we call external Sandhi between words, not necessarily between roots or stems of words and endings or prefixes and suffixes to words. Okay, so 2. Here are the rules for final R. And remember, in all the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet are called the name of the letter plus kara, except for R. R has a special name, repa. So we have repa here. So this would be final rules for the rules for final repa. So A, before a word beginning with a voiced letter, voiced or soft letters, right, is where we produce the letter with the sound with more vibration of the vocal cords. And to just remind us, we have the different vargas or the different families of letters: gutturals, palatals, cerebrals, dentals, and labials. And the last 3 there are 5 members of each one of these families or groups, and the last 3 are voiced. The first 2 are unvoiced, also called hard. Sometimes we call them surds and sonnets. They're called hard and soft. They're also called unvoiced and voiced. So here we talk about the voiced, the last 3 elements of each of the 5 vargas from kata, kacha, tata, pa. Okay, so here we have it. So before a word beginning with a voiced letter, so if we see R at the end of the first word, and then a voiced letter coming at the beginning of the second word, then R remains the same. So here's some examples. Punar gachati is just simply written together, punar gachati. Now, of course, in Devanagari, the symbol for R is here, repa, right? And what happens when you put them together in the Devanagari text, that becomes a little curl on the top of the G there. So punar gachati, punar plus gachati becomes punar gachati. Same, doesn't change. Because why? Because ga is ka hard or unvoiced, ga nga. In the gutturals, ga is voiced, right, or soft. So then we have punar agachati, right? Now agachati, also voiced, are vowels. So again, we have punar agachati becomes punaragachati. Doesn't change. All right. So B, before an unvoiced letter, or the end of a line, right? At the end of a line, R follows the same rules as S, and we saw that sometimes S becomes visarga, right? So let's have a look. So we have puna, puna, right? So here we have puna, puna, we're punar, punar, right? Which means again. So puna, puna usually means again and again. So punar, punar, we add them together. We'll assume that at the end of, he hasn't put it here to show it, but he should have put a dunda here or a punctuation mark at the end, marking the end of a half verse or a full verse, like a comma or a full stop, period. And so we get punar before a P, right? Pa pa is pa pa ba ba ma. The first two letters are hard or unvoiced. So therefore, because it's in front of a unvoiced letter, the R changes to visarga. So it becomes punaha, right? Punaha. And the second word, punaha, is at the end of the line, So he should have actually put a dunda there or put a mark to show us the either a comma or full stop. And so it becomes also a visarga, right? So this is it, before unvoiced letter or before the end of a line. So that's the first example. Next, we have punar tatra. So ta is also, right, is a dental T, right? So dental T, ta, 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 right? So ta is also unvoiced or hard letter, right? So before that, the R changes to an S, right? Remember, we have the S, that rule with visarga or with S coming at the end of a word and a T coming before it. It changes to the sibilant, right? Changes to the S sound of the letter that comes after it. So the letter that comes after it is dental T. So the R becomes a dental S, right? Okay. So punar tatra becomes punas tatra. Yeah. Okay. So the third thing about final R or repa, whether original or derived from S, the final R cannot stand before another R, right? So imagine we have final R and then the next word begins with another R. The final R is dropped and the vowel before it is made long if it's short. So if the vowel is short that comes before the R at the end of the first word, then if it's followed by another R, that R is dropped and the vowel is made long. If the vowel is already long, don't worry about it. Just drop the R. That's what he's trying to say. So punar ramaha becomes punar ramaha, right? So what happened? We dropped the first R and we made the short A in punar, right? Long. So we have punar ramaha. All right. So that's all for final repa, final R. Here are the rules for final P, final cerebral T, and final K. So before a voice sound, these letters become voiced. And normally that's the way Sandhi works. When we have the ending of the initial word, if the second word starts with a sound which is different in the family lineage of the different sounds that the first word ends in, the first word's ending will change and become more like the sound. It'll become more like the sound. It'll sort of assimilate and become more like the sound. That's the whole general idea of Sandhi, is to avoid us changing places in the mouth, which is the different sthanas, the different places that we pronounce the guttals, palatal, cerebrals, dentals, and labials in different parts of the mouth. So so that the end of the first word gets flavored by the beginning of the But when it comes in contact with the beginning of the second word, the first letter of the second word helps to change that and flavor it so that it's a smooth transition between words. It's to avoid hiatus, which is the abrupt breaking of words, right, or breaking of a sentence or breaking of sounds that are following on after each other, like that. So before a voiced sound, these letters become voiced. That makes sense. Before unvoiced sound, they remain the same, right? So because what? Because all of these are unvoiced, right? These are all hard sounds. Pa, pa, ba, ba, ma. So pa, pa is ta, ta, the cerebral ta. That's also unvoiced. And ka is ka, ka. It's also unvoiced, right? So all of these are unvoiced to start with, these endings of the first initial word, right? So when they come before a voiced initial letter in the second word, they also become voiced. And when they come before an unvoiced, they stay the same because they were already unvoiced, so they remain unvoiced. That makes sense. Okay. So now here's some examples. So we have Rik, which is a mantra from the Veda, right? A Rik, especially from the Rig Veda, right? Rik plus Veda, right? So Rik before V, the semivowels, V is a semivowel. It's also considered to be soft or voiced, right? Voice. So therefore, the K at the end of Rik changes to becomes softer. It becomes voiced also. So ka, ka, ga. Ga is the first voiced of the same family. So ka becomes ga. So Rik Veda becomes Rig Veda. Much easier to say than Rik Veda. See? Rig Veda. All right. And the second one, we're also using the first word Rik. And then we have Samhita. Samhita is, of course, the Rik Samhita is the book, the main book of the Rig Veda. Like that. Of course, there are Samhitas, Aranyakas, Brahmanas, and Upanishads, all belonging to the Rig Veda, but the basic hymns of the Rig Veda would be the Rik Samhita. So the Rik Samhita, now S being a sibilant, right, is a hard sound, right? And therefore, Rik doesn't change because it's also a hard sound. The K is a hard sound, the S is a hard sound, so it stays the same. It stays as Rik Samhita. Yeah. Okay. So there'd be before a nasal. What are the nasals? Nga, nya, ra, na, ma. Okay, these are the nasals that we get. They're the last of the 5 members of each one of those families of letters according to different places in the mouth, different vargas. Okay, so before a nasal, any one of those nasals, right? Before they become those endings, per, cerebral T, P, cerebral T, and K, they become the nasal of their row or varga, their family, their varga, right? Of letters. For example, sup. I don't know if you remember, but Panini is a little aphorism called sup. Sup means suajas amajas tabambias gebambias gasibambias gasasamgio sup. So sup represents all nominal endings in Panini grammar. So sup plus nama, which means name, right? Sup plus nama. The P is going to change to the nasal before the nasal. N is a nasal, right? Na in nama. Before that nasal, sup is going to change. The P in sup, which is not nasal, is going to change to the nasal of the labials because pa is a labial. So it's going to become the labial nasal. The labial nasal is called ma. So sup becomes sum and nama stays the same. Sum nama. Okay. So now we have before H, that is ha, hakara. Before H, these letters become voiced. What letters are we talking about? Again, we're talking about P, cerebral T, and K coming at the end of the first word. Before H, these letters become voiced, right? Remember, they're unvoiced. They're hard right now. They become softened, right? So pa, ta, and ka, right, are going to become voiced, right? Before H. right? And the H changes also in this situation. So first of all, the P, the cerebral T, and the K become voiced. And second of all, the H that begins the second word, right, is going to be becomes their voiced aspirated counterpart. Now remember, in the Vargas we have unvoiced, unaspirated, unvoiced, aspirated. Aspiration just means more air. So we have ka, ka, more air. Ga, ga, right? So the second member of every Varga, of every group, is unvoiced or hard, aspirated. And the fourth member is soft aspirated or voiced aspirated. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do two things. The first thing is, so let's look at the example. It'll explain it. Like I said, vak, vak meaning speech, right? Vak. So vak, hasati. Hasati begins with a hakara, H, right? So vak before hasati is first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the vak and we're going to make it, we're going to soften it. We're going to make it voiced. Yes? So it's hard. Ka is hard or unvoiced. And how does it become? It becomes g, right? Just as we had up here with Rig Veda, right? Okay, it becomes g, right? So then we get vag. But that's not all that happens. We also have to change the hakara, the H in the initial letter of the second word. That is going to become the soft, the voiced aspirated counterpart. So what is the voiced aspirated counterpart of g? It's the next letter along in the fourth letter of that group, right? So what do we get? Ka, ka, ga, ga. So it becomes vag, gasati. Vag, gasati. So it's the aspirated, more air, letter of the same group, right? So it becomes, vak becomes vag, hasati becomes gasati, and it becomes vag gasati. Okay. So number 4. Here's a rule for final guttural N and cerebral N, right? So like final dental N, final guttural N becomes double guttural N before vowels if the guttural N is preceded by a short vowel. Okay, so if your first word ends in a guttural N and the vowel before to the left of the guttural N is short, right? Then if it's followed by a vowel, if it's followed by any vowel in beginning the second word, then we double that double N, that double guttural N, two N's with dots on top. Yeah. So also same thing for cerebral N. Same thing. Cerebral N. If your word ends in cerebral N, if your first word, and the next word begins in a vowel, it becomes double cerebral N if the cerebral N, right, at the end of the initial word is preceded by a short vowel. So we have to look out for this short vowel and words ending in a short vowel and then guttural N or cerebral N, or even, remember we had this other rule also about dental N. Dental N also becomes doubled in that case too. So all these N's, the dental, the guttural, the dental, the guttural, the cerebral, and the dental, right? So n, nya, not nya. So sorry, n, r, and na, right? Not the palatal and not the labial. Okay, so rule 5. Here is a rule for initial ch, cha, which is the aspirated unvoiced palatal, right? Ch is the letter which is is first of all unvoiced or hard, right? Because it's the second in the group of palatals, and so it's the unvoiced aspirated palatal, cha. Okay, so an initial cha, right? Initial cha, that's initial of the second the second word, becomes CCH, right? If the first word ends in a short vowel. So sure, your first word ending in a short vowel, second word beginning with CH, right? So for example, we could say Gayatri Chandaha, right? So the ch at the end of Gayatri, right? It turns into a C, and then CCH. Yeah. So we have if the first word ends in a short vowel, okay. So if the first word ends in a short vowel, second word begins with a CH, then the CH becomes CCH. The CH, right? The aspirated, the unvoiced aspirate palatal, right? Also becomes CCH after long A or ma. And here's some examples to explain that. Okay. So we have kutra. Kutra ends in a short A. Yeah. Kutra ends in a short A, right? And then we have chaya. So kutra means where, chaya means shadow, right? So kutra, chaya, chaya. So kutra chaya becomes kutrach chaya, right? It's a type of it's sometimes called reduplication. Okay, so the CH here, the initial CH becomes CCH. Okay. Ambiguities can sometimes be created by sandhi. Two different sets of words could appear the same after sandhi has been applied. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of that. Right, so there could be some ambiguities breaking sandhis, right? That we see some words that are put together in a certain way, and we can break them apart in different ways. So we already know this from, for example, dirgha sandhi, right? Dirgha sandhi or long sandhi means when you get a short or long vowel and another short or long vowel, a short or long vowel ending the first word, a short or long vowel beginning the second word, they coalesce, they come together, and they form a long vowel. So a short A followed by another short A becomes a long A. Long A and a short A become a long A. Short A and a long A become a long A, and two long A's also become a long A. So there you have four different cases. So if you have a long A and you're splitting the sandhi there, it could be that there could be four different understandings of that. Four different ways. So you have to understand by context, of course. So anyway, let's have a look here. This is a little bit different. We're talking about ambiguities, right? Ambiguities in sandhi, breaking sandhi. So we have Ramaha Eva. Ramaha Eva, as we studied in Visarga Sandhi, right? The Ramaha Eva, the Visarga is going to drop because of that type of Visarga Sandhi. So it becomes Rama Eva. Rame Eva, right? Also, the E is going to turn into an A, right? So we get Rama Eva. So here we see the two right-hand side, the two things after sandhi is applied are actually the same. Rama Eva. So if you see Rama Eva, you can split it two ways. It could be the Ramaha Eva, or it could be Rame Eva. So you have to be aware of that. Yeah. So now we have another example here. So we have Balaha, right? Balaha, right? Balaha na goes together. And again, because of the Visarga Sandhi and dental end being soft or voiced, right? And there being a long A Visarga, the Visarga simply dropped. So bala na, it becomes bala na, right? But we also have another example of bala, ending with a long A, and na also becomes just bala na, right? So bala na, you could break it as bala naha, bala na, or balaha naha, na. Yeah. You can usually judge from the context of the sentence with which words are correct. Now, sometimes there'll be an option. Sometimes both meanings in context, usually one meaning is obviously correct and one is not. But sometimes both meanings could be there. So in the case of both meanings being correct, some commentators or some translators might say, well, I think it's this one. And the other one will say, I think it's this one. So there'll be some ambiguity there because of the break in Sandhis. Okay, so that's the end of Sandhi. So now we're going to look at the declension of nouns ending in U. So we have here two nouns, hetu, which means cause, and denu, which means cow. Hetu is masculine, denu is feminine, right? So hetu, we could use, instead of hetu, we could, Vaishnavas could use Vishnu, Vishnavaha, like that. So here it is, hetu. Again, he has put this in one, and because there are some differences in denu, how denu is declined, right? From hetu, the masculine and the feminine are a little bit different. So I would suggest the very first thing you should do is make two separate graphs. Make the masculine and the feminine. Make one Vishnu, masculine, and make one for think of some other feminine word. You can use denu also. Denu is good. So hetu or denu is fine. Okay, so let's just go through the declension. Nominative. Hetuhu, hetu, long U, hetavaha. Accusative. Hetum, hetu, again, long U, hetun, long U, N. And it also could be, if you're declining denu, denuhu, right? Then instrumental, hetuna, and denva. Hetubyam, hetubihi. Then dative, hetave, or denvai, right? Hetubyam, hetubyaha. Ablative, hetoho, denvaha, hetubyam, hetubyaha. Genitive, hetoho, denvaha, hetvoho, hetunam. Locative, hetau, denvam, hetvoho, hetushu. And vocative, heto, denu, heto, hetu, hetavaha. Heto, hetu, hetavaha. Yeah, hetu, hetavaha. It's just the same as the, except for the vocative singular, which is, otherwise the nominative is the same as the vocative. Very, very, very similar to most nouns, except for the vocative singular. The vocative dual and plural are usually the same as the nominative dual and plural. Okay, so the singular, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative have an optional feminine form. For example, the feminine dative singular is, oh, I see. So he's saying optional. So here he's saying in the singular dative here, right? Fourth case. And the, or what we call chaturthi, vibhakti, and ablative, genitive, and locative, singular. So ablative, genitive, and locative. So all of these, right, all of these optional forms are actually options, and denu can be both. The feminine can go like hetu, or it can go like denu. It can be both. Denu can actually be both. So for the feminine, for the singular dative, ablative, genitive, and locative, there's an optional feminine form. So you need to, when you write out the feminine, you need to put two entries there for the singular dative, ablative, genitive, and locative. For example, the feminine dative singular is denave or denvai, right? So here we have, he's written only here hetave and denvai, right? But it's actually can be denave and denvai. All right. So this entire declension is the same as the declension ending in I, page 160. Okay, so it's very similar to to I-ending nouns, except for the fact that there's sandhi involved, internal sandhi, between the stem of the noun and the ending. So we can remember hari hari harayaha, right? So we have an I-ending noun, hari hari harayaha. The I at the end of hari in the nominative plural becomes ayaha, right? Harayaha. So it becomes a Y. The I becomes a Y, meaning that the vowel becomes a semi-vowel, right? So it's corresponding semi-vowel. But here, because it ends in U, the U becomes a V, which is the corresponding semi-vowel for U. Okay, so it makes sense, right? If you just put the two words together, and if it ends in I or U, just make the sandhi. If you make the internal sandhi there, you'll get either Y or V in that particular case, nominative plural. Okay, so the only differences are due to sandhi, correct? Okay, so now let's talk about compounds. Now we'll study another kind of compound. What did we study before? We studied dvandva compounds, right? In which case, the dvandva compounds are basically where the different there are two aspects of the compound, or two words in the compound, and they were of equal importance, right? So now we're going to talk about some compounds where the words are not of equal importance. So now we'll study another kind of compound, the Taparusha compound. Taparusha means that person, right? Taparusha compound, unlike the dvandva, whose members are considered equal, the members of the compound are considered equal. In the Taparusha, the last member, or the one to the right, if there's many members, the one on the right at the end of the compound, right, is usually considered the principal, or what is he in Sanskrit, the word principal, he puts as pradhana, the principal. And the prior member, the one coming to the left, right, or the ones coming to the left, are subordinate, upasarjana. So we have pradhana and upasarjana, the principal or subordinate members of the compound. Whereas in dvandva, they're all considered equal, right? So of equal importance. The Taparusha is sometimes called a determinative compound because the subordinate member qualifies or determines the sense of the principal member, which could stand alone, right? So, for example, of dvandva compounds, we had Rama and Krishna, Sita and Rama, right? Sita and Rama. If we take one out, it changes the meaning of the sentence. But here we have in the Taparusha, for example, we might have a genitive Taparusha where we have a type of Taparusha where the subordinate word which comes before is like an adjective. So we have beautiful Rama. So Rama by itself doesn't change the meaning of the sentence if we take out beautiful. It's just a determination or a description of Rama to add Sundara Rama, right? Okay, so one type of Taparusha. So this is called a Taparusha. Now, amongst Taparushas, there are different types. So here, one type of Taparusha is called a Kamadharya. So Kamadharya compound, both members refer to the same object, and if separated, would be in the same case. So when we don't have, remember in compounds, the basic idea in compounds is that no matter how many words we put together, only the right-hand word, the last word in a compound, has an ending on it. Yeah, the others don't. They lose their ending, so you just get all the words with in their stem form and put them all together, right? And then the last one you add an ending, and the ending may change. Remember, we were talking about with dvandva compounds before. We have Rama and Sita. So because we've got two members there, we had to put the ending on Rama a dual case ending because there were two. If there was more than two, we'd make it, right? So Radha Krishna Bhyam, right? Has to be dual. Yeah. Sita Rama Lakshmana Hanuma Tebyo, right? Has to be plural because there's three or more, right? So like that. Okay, so now so in the Kamadharya compound, both members refer to the same object, and if separated, would be in the same case. So, for instance, I think we talked about nouns in apposition. When nouns are in apposition, So we have a statement like Rama, the king, went to the forest, right? So Rama, the king, went to the forest. They're not separate people. Rama and the king, Rama is the king. So Rama, the king, went to the forest. So King Rama went to the forest is basically what we're saying. So Rama and king have to be put in the same case because they refer to the same person, right? They're called nouns in apposition. I think he called it a double subject or something like that. Anyway, okay. So anyway, so that where we separate the different objects in a compound, and they are usually and they're kept in the same case. If you separate them, that's called samanadhikaranam. Samanadhikaranam. Okay. The simplest kind of a Kamadarya. What is a Kamadarya again? A Kamadarya is a type of Taparusha compound. What is a Taparusha compound? A Taparusha compound, again, is one with unequal, a subordinate member and a principal member, right? The last word is a principal member usually, and the other is subordinate. Like that. So, and a Kamadarya is a kind of one of those where if we broke those things apart into two words, they would both have the same ending, right? So the simplest kind of Kamadarya is basically like an adjective and a noun in English. Just think of an adjective and a noun. So just like I said, beautiful Rama, right? Beautiful Rama. So beautiful Rama can put it together and make it into a Kamadarya compound in Sanskrit, right? So here's some examples, okay? Basically like an adjective and a noun. In Sanskrit, an adjective and a noun are basically the same thing, except that the noun will be usually declined in either masculine, feminine, or neuter, and the adjective will be declined in any one, masculine, feminine, and neuter, right? Because the adjective, when it goes with a noun and it's not compounded, it has to take the same case as the same nominal case as the noun that it describes, right? So Sundaraha Ramaha, like that, right? Sundaraha Ramaha, like that. So now here's some examples here. You've got Shukla Mala, right? Now there's a thing called Vigraha here. Vigraha means breaking or parsing, breaking up and analyzing the compound. So whenever we analyze something in Sanskrit, we can call that Vigraha in Sanskrit. Let's just call it parsing. Okay, so when we parse this, here we have a compound, Shukla Mala. Shukla Mala. Okay, Shukla Mala. We know Shukla means white, so it's like an adjective, right? And Mala means garland, right? So it means white garland, and it's become a compound, one word in Sanskrit. A compounded word, a Kamadarya compound, which is a type of Taparusha again. So if we break it apart, if we parse that, we get two words, Shukla, and Mala, right? Shukla with a long A. Notice here Shukla with a long A. Here Shukla with a short A. Why? Because the stem doesn't have an ending, right? But here, when it's parsed, we have two words with the same ending. Shukla, Mala, right? So Shukla, Mala becomes Shukla, Mala when parsed, when broken up. When that Kamadarya is broken up, it's an adjectival compound, basically, we can call it. Yeah. Okay. So now here's another example, right? So we have Priya Balaha. Priya Balaha. Balaha means boy. Priya means dear, right? So Priya, in this case, Balaha is a masculine noun, right? Means boy. It's in the nominative, singular, right? Priya Bala, right? Priya Bala means dear boy. Priya Bala means dear boy as a compound, as a Kamadarya compound. If we break it apart, if we parse it, it becomes two words, Balaha, right? And Priyaha. Well, when Priyaha comes before Balaha, what happens? Right? The B in Balaha is, again, voiced, right? Or soft. And so the Visarga changes to an O because it's short A Visarga, right? Priyaha, short A Visarga, followed by the B, right? So it becomes Priyo Balaha. It's what it is. If we continue to break the sandhi here, we get priyaha balaha, right? But with sandhi, it's priyo balaha. Yeah, both in the nominative singular. Okay, so note that even if the second member of the compound is a feminine noun, mala, even if the second word in the compound, right? So up here we've got shukla mala, white garland, right? Even if it's the second one is feminine, right? The adjective often takes the form of a masculine stem A. He hasn't shown that here, but feminine nouns keep their gender in these compounds, right? The feminine nouns keep their gender, right? Well, especially if it comes at the end, it's going to keep its gender. But he's suggesting Shukla is Shukla a feminine noun? I don't know that it is. Anyway, but he says here it's possible, right? So, for example, we should say Krishnamala. Krishnamala, right, means a black garland, right? So then Krishnamala would be, we would break it up and it would be, anyway, his point here is that the second member in the compound is feminine. The adjective, which is the first member of the compound, right, often takes the form of a masculine a-ending noun. Okay, just have to accept that. Right. Another type of Kamantarai is the noun and noun. Now a noun and another noun, not an adjective, but a noun and a noun. And very little difference between a noun, an adjective, and a noun. But let's see. Okay. So here we have Rajarshi, right? Which means Raja means king. Rishi means a sage or seer, right? And by analysis or parsing it, we get Raja Rishi, right? So Raja and Rishi, right? And right, the parsing seems to be exactly the same here. Huh. Raja Rishi. I think this is a mistake, actually, because Rishi should start with a ri. Should start with a ri, and up here he's just given the same as here. So this is a mistake in the printing. It's got to be a mistake in the printing because there's no difference between this and this except a dash. Okay. Unless we're talking about a sandhi rule here that Rajaha makes a sandhi change to re becoming R. Yeah, with sandhi. Okay, with sandhi, but without sandhi, this would be a re. Okay, that's possible. Okay, so now we talk more about Taparushas. In other Taparush compounds, not Kamadharayas, right? Here usually referred to as Taparushas, right? Separate from Kamadharayas, which are a type of Taparusha. The members refer to different objects and would be in different cases Vyadikarna, right? Not, as was set up here, Samanadikarna. So there's Samadadikarna. We notice karna is common in both these words here. Both these technical terms. Samanadikarna means that both words, when parsed, would be in the same case. And down here, Vyadikarna means that the words would have different cases if parsed, broken up, analyzed. If the compound were dissolved and the last member is put in the nominative. Okay, so he's got the last member is going to be put in the nominative case. Okay, but the other member is not going to be when parsed. The compound is further named after the case of the first member, of the subordinate member, right? Remember, Taparusha has two members, subordinate member and principal member. The subordinate member, whatever case that's in, right, that will give the name to that type of Taparusha compound. So we can have a Pratama Taparusha, Dvitiya Taparusha, Tritiya Taparusha, Chaturthi Taparusha, Panchami Taparusha. Most common is the Shasti Taparusha, genitive compound, genitive Taparusha, okay? very, very common. And even a locative, a Saptami Taparush. Okay, so these are all possible. So that's what he's saying. So if somebody asks you, okay, what kind of Taparush is this? You can say it's a nominative Taparush, or it's accusative, or it's instrumental, or it's dative, or it's ablative, or it's genitive, or it's locative, right? It can be. Yeah. So depending on when parsing, what the subordinate member which comes first is what that word would take as a case ending, a nominative ending, not a nominal ending. So that's the thing. And in some cases, of course, there'll be ambiguity, and somebody will say, oh, that's a Shasti Taparush, that's a genitive Taparush, and somebody will say, no, I interpret it to be an instrumental Tritiya Taparush, like that. So again, this depends upon interpretation, right? Sometimes, and by the context, we can understand which one it's supposed to be. So again, the other Taparush compounds here usually referred to as Taparush. The members refer to different objects and would be in different cases Vyadi Karna, if the compound would dissolve, the last member is put in the nominative. Why is the last member put in the nominative? Because that person, Taparusha means that person. So what about that person? That person is always going to be in the nominative, okay? So the compound is further named after the case of the first member, which I just explained, which would be in cases 2 through 7. Cases 2 through 7. So remember, we've got this first case is nominative, and the last case, the 8th case, is vocative, or sometimes called sambodhanam. It's never called astama. It's always called sambodhana pratama, right? It's called vocative because it's very much. Remember, we were just discussing about how when we talked about hetu and denu, we were talking about how the vocative, except for the vocative singular, the vocative dual and plural is always the same as the nominative dual and plural. It's only the nominative singular and the vocative singular which differ. Okay, so basically you can think of the vocative as like the nominative. That's why it's called sambodhana pratama. Pratama means nominative. Sambodhana means vocative. Okay. So we've got, apart from that, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? We've got 6 other cases. So accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative. So we've got Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, Shashti, Saptami. These 5 cases, right? 6 cases, right? 6 cases, which can be there can be Taparushas in these 6 cases, right? So from cases 2 to 7, if the compound were analyzed. For example, if the first member is genitive, he's saying genitive because the Shasti Taparush, the genitive Taparush, is like a really common, very, very common compound in Sanskrit. So if the first member is genitive, the compound is called a genitive Taparush, right? Which usually you'll hear Sanskrit grammarians say, oh, that's a Shasti Taparush. That's a genitive Taparush, right? Right? What do we, what's an example of a genitive Taparush? Well, he's going to give one right here, the king's man, right? The man, and then the king, if we break it, the king is going to go in the genitive case. Kings, right? The king's man, or the man of the king, right? Is how it's broken up. Okay, so for example, if the first member is genitive, the compound is called a genitive Taparush. Here are 2 genitive Taparushas or Shasti Taparushas. Okay, so we have Raja Purushaha, right? That means the king's man, right? It literally means king, man, right? Man of the king is what it means. Okay, so, or the king's man. So if we break that apart, it becomes Ragnyaha, which is the genitive singular, right? Shasti Ekavachana of Raja, right? Ragnya. Purushaha is in the nominative singular. So we have genitive singular and nominative singular, right? 2 different cases for the 2 words when we break it apart. Okay, and then we have Next example is Nara Pustakam. Nara Pustakam means the man's book, the man's book. So if we break that apart, analyze that compound, right, as a Shasti Taparusha, as a genitive Taparush compound, right, it becomes Narasya, which is genitive singular of Nara, Naraha, right, and Pustakam being a Pustaka being a neuter noun, so it's Pustakam, right? Pustakam, Pustake, Pustakani, right? So we have Narasya Pustakam, means the book of the man or the man's book, right? That's the analysis. Okay, so a compound, like a simple word, may become a member of another compound. So sometimes you look at Sanskrit sentence and the whole sentence is one word. The whole sentence is one word, and we have to break it all up with Sunday. So we have to break it up into things, and let's say it's a big long compound, right? So we have to analyze the compound. We'll analyze usually what we do is we look at the right hand side, and we analyze from the right to left, right? Just like we were doing with different sentences that we were going through in previous classes, right? We analyze from right to left, and we look at the principal word is at the end, especially with Taparushas like that, right? And then we analyze how does adding that word to this, that's a particular type of compound. Then once we have that particular kind of compound, we add some more to the left and we get a different kind of compound. We add some more to the left, we get a different kind of compound. Finally, we get a huge compound like that. And each time we understand the meaning, and therefore we get a full meaning at the end. So a compound, a simple word, may be a member of another compound. In these cases, in India, the analysis begins with smaller pieces. So start breaking them up into smaller pieces, then put them together. So, for example, here we have Ramaputra Pustakam, right? So let's look. So Ramaputra is obviously, it's what? It's a Shasti Taparush. It's a genitive Taparush compound, right? Ramasya Putraha. Ramaputra becomes Ramasya Putraha, which means the son of Rama, right? Ramasya is in genitive singular, Putraha is in the nominative singular, right? So that's a Shasti Taparush. Then we have Pustakam, right? So if we break it further up, right, it will be Ramasya of Rama, Putrasya of the son, of his son, right? Of the son, right? Pustakam. So Ramasya Putrasya Pustakam. So this is like a double Shasti Purush, right? Right? It's a double genitive compound because there's two genitives here. The two subordinate words to Pustakam. Pustakam is the main word, is the primary word, the pradhana word, principal word, right? So we're talking about, what are we talking about when we're using this compound? We're talking about a book. Whose book is it? It's the book of the son. Whose son? Rama's son, right? So first of all, it's the book of Rama's son, right? Of the son of Rama, like that. Okay, so Ramasya, Putrasya, both in genitive singular, and Pustakam, nominative singular, right? In the West, analysis of the compound begins at the right and goes to the left. Right, in the West, analysis of compound begins at the right and goes to the left. In India, analysis begins with smaller units. So, okay, so we can, in whichever way we want to do it, right, we can do it. So here he's saying, especially with Taparushas, because the last thing is the principal or pradhana word, then we can analyze some of the other things first and then eventually add them to the principal word, see how they relate to the principal word. Rather than taking apart a compound, the analysis starts with smaller units and shows how the compound is built up. Okay. So he did it in a different way. He did it basically from left to right. So, summary of compounds. Now we've just introduced that. We had Dvandva compounds in the last lesson, and now we're getting Taparush compounds, some of which are called Kamadharayas, and then we have 6 other types of Taparushas. So we learned 7 types of compounds today, Kamadharaya, and we learned accusative Taparush compounds, instrumental. We didn't see any examples, but accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative, right? Taparusha compounds. So we actually learned 7 types of compounds today, whereas we learned, I think, a couple of types of Dvandva compounds in the previous lesson. Now, to just summarize that, compounds may be classified into 4 groups. 4 groups. So the following is a general description for background information to which exceptions may be added later. Okay, so we had first in the last lesson, we had Dvandva. Dvandva is a compound. Each member is considered principal, pradhana. There are 2 types, right? And we learned about them. The itaretara Dvandva, where members are viewed separately. For example, Rama Sita, right? Or Sita Ramau, right? Depending on how you want to say it. You say Rama Sita or Sita Rama, right? And you have the last word, be it here, the last word is Sita, so it becomes Sita because that's feminine, dual, right? Because there's 2 persons being talked about here. Rama Sita. If it was Sita Rama, Rama would be the last, as we saw before, and that's masculine, so it'd be Ramau. So Rama Sita, Sita Ramau, right? Rama and Sita. So itaretara, the members can be viewed separately of this compound. And samahara, right, is the second type of Dvandva compound. So we have itaretara Dvandva and samahara Dvandva. The members are viewed as a whole. As a whole. I mean, for example, sukha dukam, which can also be dukkha sukham, right? So sukha dukam is happiness and suffering. Put it around the other way, dukkha sukham, right? Suffering and happiness. Okay, so these are also 2 like that. But we usually think of happiness and distress. Krishna says in the Gita, right? Happiness and distress. So sukha dukkha as a sort of a compound, sort of a compound of feelings, happiness and distress, right? Okay, so iterator. I'm not sure if he explained exactly in a more detailed way. This deserves a little bit more analysis about the difference between itaretara and samahara Dvandva compounds. In any case, they're Dvandvas. Okay, they're both Dvandva compounds where both of the words are principal. You can't take one without taking the other and have the meaning stay the same. So now we have, secondly, what we understood from here is Taparusha compounds. So in this compound, the first member, which is subordinate, qualifies and is subordinate to the second member, which is to the right, which is the last one to the right, is the pradhana or principal member. There are several types. Taparusha, we have the Vyadi Karna Taparusha. The Vyadi Karna Taparusha, remember, has, if you analyze it or parse it, it'll make 2 words with different endings. This name is normally used for the compound that refers to different objects. The first member would be in a different case than the second if the compound were dissolved, parsed, or analyzed. This compound has 6 types. Remember, 6 types? There's the accusative, the instrumental, the dative, the ablative, the locative. The accusative, the instrumental, the dative, the ablative, the genitive, and the locative. Right, those 6. Yeah. So what we call dvitiya, tritiya, chaturthi, panchami. It's easier in Sanskrit. Dvitiya, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th cases. Yeah, Taparushas. So there's 6 types of those, right? Corresponding to the cases 2 through 7. For example, Raja Purushaha, the king's man, right? So it's going to be Rajasya Purushaha, right? Genitive singular, Rajasya Purushaha, or Ragya, whatever it is, whatever Ragyaha. If it's Rajan, if we're declining it like an N ending noun, then it's Ragyaha and Purushaha, right? So the king's man, right? So then, okay, so we have those type. We have 6 types of Taparushas like that. And then we have the other thing, which is called a Kamadharaya, which is what is the difference between a Kamadharaya type of Taparush and the other types of Taparush. The difference is samanadhikarana. It's a samanadhikarana Taparush. When you break apart the principal and the subordinate words, they both would be in the same case, right? Whereas up here, vyadhikarana, they're not in the same case. Okay, so here they're both in the same case, right? Which would be normally nominative, right? Because Taparusha ends in a nominative usually, right? So both members refer to the same object and therefore would be in the same case if the compound were dissolved. For example, Shukla Mala, the white garland. If the first member is a number, okay, now remember this, right? So it's a type of Taparush. Right, there's two types of Taparush. There's one, if you analyze it, right, it'll have different, the words will have different case endings. One where the case endings are the same, and one where the case endings are the same, where the first word, which is adjectival to the second word, right, is a number, is just a number, right? So for example, we say 3 garlands, right? A number. That has a different name by itself, that type of Kamadharaya, which is a type of Taparusha, right? So we have a Taparusha, which is a type of Taparusha, is a Samanadhikarana Taparusha, not a Vyadhikarana Taparusha, right? And then a type of Samanadhikarana Taparusha, a type of Kamadharaya, is called a Dvigu if the first member is a number, right? So for example, Dvivachana. Up until now, we said ekvachana, dvivachana, bahuvachana, which means singular, dual, and plural, and we've talked about that, right? As part of our declining of and conjugating verbs too, singular, dual, and plural. We talk about, right, in both nominal and verbal endings. So dvivachana means dual number, dual, right? Like bahuvachana means many. And ekvachana means one, right? Singular. Okay, so in each case, ek, dvi, ek means one, dvi means two, bahu means many. So I'm not sure, it's not exactly a number, bahu. So it might mean something else. But anyway, ekvachana and dvivachana are dvigus. They're dvigu compounds because the word vachana means what is spoken, right? So and ek and dvi means singular thing is spoken about, dual thing is spoken about, right? Dual number. So then we have, okay, so again, these are types of Taparushas. The first type is the Vyadhikarana Taparusha with different endings when it's analyzed. The second type is the Kamadharaya, where there'll be Samanadhikarana, there'll be the analyzed parts of it will come with the same ending after being analyzed or parsed or dissolved. Yeah. Okay. C, and part of that can be dvigus if there's a number involved in the first word, right? So then upapada, the second member is an adjusted verbal root. Okay, he's probably going to explain that coming up, right? For example, Brahmavit. So Brahma means Brahman, means the supreme, right? So Vit comes from vid, to know. So Vit, right, is an ending which is put on here. Brahmavit means the knower of Brahman, the knower of the supreme, right? Brahmavit. That's called an upada. He's going to probably go into, in some other lesson, in the second part of the book, he'll go into more detail about this. For example, Brahmavit, knower of Brahman. Okay. Then we have a nanya compound, right? That is a Tatparush compound in which dental na, right, is reduced to a or an, used to negate things. So the example is, and I think we discussed this before, when we have vidya means knowledge. So avidya, right? Avidya means no knowledge, right? We have also, like for instance, we have ananta, right? Ananta means end. So anta or ananta, when when the prefix a comes before a vowel, then we have to put a. Just like we do in English, we say a book, but we say an elephant, right? So here we say avidya, but if we say anta, anta means end. Anta, ananta means no end. Ananta, infinite, right? Ignorance. So avidya means ignorance, right? So he's given some a page here, 213, that you can go and check that out at. So then the fifth type of Taparusha here is a pradi. Pradi. The first member is one of the 20 upasargas. Okay, upasargas are prefixes given by Panini, and he has listed them beginning with pra, and we can see them in pages 197 to 199. So look at that, right? So for example, and he hasn't given an example here. The entire compound is used as a nominal, as a noun, right? For example, anu swara. Okay, so anu means afterwards. We have also upanishad, right? Upa means close. So Upanishad means to sit close to the teacher, right? So here he's given the example anu swara. Swara means sound. Anu means after. So after, it's an after sound, right? So if you get one of these 20 upasargas that Panini lists, right? If you get those and you put those together, that's called a pradi tatparusha. Okay. So next we have gati, a gati tatparusha. The first member is another type of prefix, not one of the 20 upasargas, and also not this negating what, a or an as a prefix. Yeah. So it's not a non, it's not a pradi, it's called a gati. So it's a different type of prefix, and the entire compound is used as a nominal, as a noun. For example, here we have antar yamin, antar yamin, antar yamin. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to break that up. Okay, so he'll probably explain more about it later on, right? Because he hasn't introduced all of these with any examples. Well, given a few examples as we go on. He gave one example here, but he didn't parse it because he's going to leave that for a later lesson. Okay, so now so sum up. We've got a bunch of we've got dvandva compounds, we got Taparusha compounds. There's a lot of different types of Taparusha compounds. And then we have Bahuvrihi, the third major type, because we've said in the beginning there's 4 major types. So what are the 4 major types? Dvandva, Taparusha, Bahuvrihi, and Avibhava, right? So Bahuvrihi actually means a lot of rice, and it doesn't really mean a lot of rice. What it means is, it means a person who owns a lot of rice, right? So basically, if you have a Bahuvrihi, it shows you who is the person who owns a lot of rice, right? So it says something about something, but it refers to something outside of the two words in the compound. So in this compound, the actual principle word is outside of the compound. It's not even there. It says something. It's a description, but there's no noun that it describes. Okay, there's no personality that it describes. So in this compound, the actual principle is outside. The pradhana word is outside of the compound. It's not in the compound. The compound serves as an adjective itself, describing. We could say, we could try to say Papa Yonayaha, right, in Gita 9:32, right? Lowborn. Who's lowborn, right? It refers to somebody outside of it just says lowborn. It refers to somebody, some group outside of that, perhaps. Okay, so the members may be in the same or different cases. Okay, so in this Bahuvrihi, the type of samas type of compound, the members of the compound may be in different cases, or they may be in the same case, right? But none of them are the principle. The principle is outside of the compound. The members may be in the same or different case. For example, Maharataha. Maharataha means what? It means Maha means great, and Rata means chariot, right? So great chariot. But great chariot, Maharata, a Maharata is a person who owns a great chariot. He's a great charioteer, actually. He's a great hero, right? So he's not a chariot, and he's not a great chariot, and he's not, he is the person who owns the great chariot. He's the driver of the great chariot, or he's the great person who has the chariot, like that. So he is separate from the principal word is, right? We say Arjuna was a Maharata, right? Okay, a Maharata. So Maharata describes somebody outside of being a chariot and great. It's somebody else. So this is a Bahuvrihi compound. Having a great chariot. So it means having a great chariot. Means one whose chariot is great, or a great hero. To use an example in English, red coat. Okay, here's an example. In America, they talk about when they fought the British, for independence, they talk about fighting the redcoats, because the British soldiers used to wear red coats. So meaning having a red coat refers to a person whose coat was red, or a British soldier. Of course, the British soldiers don't wear red coats anymore, but in the certain time, they all wore red coats, and you could tell they were British because they had the particular uniform. So they called red coats, because they had red coats, right? Even if he didn't have a red coat, if he was an English soldier, you could call him a red coat, right? Because the word described English soldier, not necessarily. I mean, it originated because they all wore red coats, but it could later on be used as a description of all English soldiers, whether they had their coat on or not. Okay, so now we have, that's Bahuvrihi. Okay, so now we have Avyayi Bhava. Avyayi Bhava. Right? Avyayi means indeclinable. So Bhava means has the sense of being indeclinable. So this compound usually begins with an indeclinable. Right? The entire compound is used as an adverb. What's an adverb? An adverb is a word that modifies a verb, whereas an adjective is a word that modifies a noun. So, for example, beautiful boy or dear boy, right? That dear is because boy is a noun. Therefore, dear or beautiful is an adjective. But an adverb would be going quickly, right? Because quickly is modifying going. How are you going? Are you going slowly or are you going quickly? Right? So somebody may be going, and somebody may ask, oh, are they going quickly or slowly? If they're going quickly or slowly, the quickly and slowly is adverb. It's adding information to the verb, whereas the adjective adds information to a noun, describes it. Adjective describes a noun, adverb describes a verb. Okay? So, for example, yata. Yata is an indeclinable, right? Nama. Nama is a nominative. It's a noun. It's a nominal, right? It's a noun, name, right? So yata nama means by name. In puja, we say sometimes yata shakti, right? By power, whatever power you have. Chant this mantra or do this puja with as much power as you have, right? Yata shakti, right? So yata nama, by name. So that these are called avyayi bhavas. Okay, so once again, how do we recognize an avyayi bhava? We recognize it if the first part of it is a indeclinable word. How do we recognize a bahuvrihi? We recognize it if there's no principal word involved in the actual compound. It refers to somebody outside the compound, right? How do we recognize the Taparusha? We recognize Taparusha because, right, the last part of the compound is the principal and the rest are descriptive, right? And how do we recognize a dvandva? Because all of them are principal. All of them are equally principal, right? So these are the four types. Four basic types, out of which we understood that there's a lot of different. Oh, he's going to explain it here. So these four groups of compounds may be understood from the perspective of which member is principal. So a dvandva, both members are principal. Taparusha, the second member is principal. Bahuvrihi, neither member is principal. The principal member is outside the compound. Avyayi bhava, the first member is principal. First member is principal, and it's an indeclinable. Okay, so if pronouns are used as prior members of a compound, right, they are put in their base forms. So we haven't really had pronouns yet, but once we get pronouns, we'll get them in their base form or stem form, right? And if we add them to another word, they are made into a particular type of compound. So we have mud. Mud means I. Asmad, we. Twad, you. Yusmad, you plural, right? You. Twad meaning you singular or thou, right? And yusmad meaning you plural. Tad, we have to be very careful with you in English, okay? When you're translating from Sanskrit, right? The tendency is to use you all the time, but we have to make a distinction between you singular or thou, you dual or two yous, and you plural. We have to make a distinction between that because in English we just use the word you and we understand by context if it's you too. So we can translate things when we use you, we can translate you alone went to the forest, or you two went to the forest, or you both went to the forest, or you all went to the forest. We have in southern United States, we have people who say y'all. They often say y'all. It means you all, right? You all, it means plural. Okay, so for example, here's some example of the mud balaha. Mud balaha means, of course, boy, right? Mud means, right, up here, I, right? So what does it mean? It's actually the stem, but it actually it means mama. It means the genitive singular. Mud means mama if we break it, right? So mud becomes the genitive singular mama, right? Mama balaha. It will be mama balaha if we break it apart, but it's mud bala, right? So my boy. It's a genitive taparush. Again, the most common form of taparush is that genitive taparush, shasti taparush. Now, Taparusha itself, the word Taparusha, right, which is the terminology for all these Taparusha compounds, right, itself is a genitive Taparush, right? So his man, his man, right? It's not Tat Purush. If we break it apart, it becomes Tasya, right? Tasya Purushaha, genitive singular, nominative singular, Purushaha, right? It becomes genitive Taparush. Okay. So here's the vocabulary. Let's quickly go through the vocabulary. So we have alpa, right? Masculine, feminine, and neuter. It's an adjective. It can be declined at any of these to go along with the noun that it describes. When it's the reason he's put here the long a next to feminine, right, is to show that when it's in the feminine, when it's declined in the feminine, it's declined with long a, means little, alpa. Guru means heavy, right? When it's declined in the feminine, it's gurvi, right? Guruhu is a teacher. Okay, so what's the difference? This is guru is an adjective, but the noun is guruhu, right? Which means a teacher, masculine noun, u ending noun. So guruhu, guru, guravaha, gurum, guru, gurun, like that. So denu's feminine, means cow, denuhu. Then we have purna. Purna, again, an adjective in the feminine. It's declined as feminine purna, right? Bahu, again, it can be declined in the feminine as bahvi or bahu, right? Much or many. Shatruhu means enemy, masculine, right? Shigra is again swift or fast, right? And in the feminine long a ending. Hetu, cause or motive.
Om Namo